Hello guys and welcome back to the guided playthrough where in the last episode we increased plastic and rubber production, allowing us to considerably increase our power generation, but more importantly allow the production of space elevator parts, which subsequently allowed us to unlock phase 3 of the space elevator, which is great because at this point, we need to increase our belt speeds because our buffers are full, which means we can't handle the throughput, which is why we've got rubber that was just on that line and this line. And this is causing a problem. So we need to increase the belt speed of this facility first and foremost. In fact, I think we already can because that's a 3. Yeah, we need to up this to Mark 4 and then Mark 5 once we have access to that. And the Mark 5 conveyor belts are going to help us a huge amount here in Logistics Mark 5 because they increase our throughput to 780 per minute. That's what, 300 per minute increase over the Mark 4s. But in order to do that, we need to do a bauxite refinement, which requires us to produce aluminum ingots, alclad aluminum sheets, and aluminum casing, which is a production chain many players find particularly difficult, at least the first time round, because you have to balance water recycling. But don't worry, we're going to make all of this a lot simpler today, so let's break down today's plan. Firstly, we need to stop resources being sent to the wrong station, so we're going to be adding another dedicated train to our train line logistics. Then in order to produce the aluminum, we're going to need to transport raw quartz to our next facility's location and also the bauxite. As such, we're going to need 2 things. First, we're going to have to cover unlocking the Hoverpack early to make building so much more simple for us, especially given bauxite is so high up. And secondly, we're going to cover blueprinting conveyor buses and allowing them to easily connect together with the auto connect feature that's newly been added. Once all those resources are at the facility, we'll start working on an aluminum plant and more importantly recycling the water within the system, as well as a little trick that you might want to use as well. So let's get started. I need to catch this train. So the first issue that we've got is that this train goes between one station and the other. It collects all the resources and you can see here this is full. No, stop. It's a train heist. Oh no, that didn't work. Oh no, that didn't work. Okay, we're edging up. There we go. Right, so the first thing that we need to do here is we're going to edit the timetable. So we're going to remove the steel pickup and steel storage, and we're going to save the changes. This means that this train will only go between this facility and the storage facility, which is going to be good for us. Another thing that I want to do really quickly, let's just meet it over here, is delete its current storage. I think it's just plastic, but it might have something else in it as well. Oh, it does. It has steel. Let's remove that. We can leave the plastic in. And then the next thing that we're going to want to do is head back to base. And we're just going to add the same train. In fact, let's change color so that we know this is the plastic and rubber computers. We can probably remove that now. So now that we're here, we need to grab our train. And of course you can press Q and go through the build menu, but what you may have seen me do just there is if you grab a piece of track, you can then hold E and just click it from there. And you can cycle just pressing E after that of all the similar buildables in each section. Right, so that is the steel train. Do we need 3 or 4? That looks like 4 to me. And then we'll set this up as the steel train. So steel pickup followed by storage steel. And then we're going to turn on that. So now, thankfully, because we do have a fair few signals throughout our world, we shouldn't have any issues with the train stopping except at junctions if 2 trains arrive at the same time. So in order to avoid that, we will use pathing signals. So I'm just going to check that we've got all of our junctions pathed, and if not, I'll show you how we do that. Okay, so none of our train stations are pathed, or none of our junctions are pathed. So we can sort that out. I'll show you how to do that briefly in a moment. But first, I want to unlock bauxite refining because I know it's going to take probably 5-10 minutes to unlock this. And I do want to jump to the Hoverpack as soon as possible. So let's just select this. We need 100 computers, 100 heavy modular frames, 250 motors, and 500 rubber. So let's just grab everything that we've got currently, but we're still going to have to go and grab all these resources from storage because, oh, look at that. We're only 19 short on the rubber. That won't take long to fill up, but we do need the motors, which is a little bit of a pain because that's the other side of the factory. Well, let's head over there. Also, fun fact, since 1.1, if you continue sliding and jumping, you jump progressively faster, as you saw there. So there's a little speed boost. So if you have a nice flat surface for a long straight section, you'll be able to jump really quickly. Oh, we didn't need that many. Oh, that's fine. I'll show you here. Is that 200? Yeah. So you see that's quite slow, but if we hold this and you time it right, notice how we're getting a small buff to our speed. Can be worth doing that, so maybe moving forwards we should have more straight lines. Anyway, let's send this off. That's going to take us 10 minutes, so we can see in the top right hand corner. And now we're going to sort out the pathing. So if we just jump across here, really it would be easier for me to show you with the Hoverpack. So let's just see how we get on for, we'll do both of these junctions with the Hoverpack, but there's one over here that I'll show building it firsthand because it's probably going to be slightly easier to understand as it's a nice open junction. So when it comes to the pathing signal, the pathing signal is really important because it allows trains to work out a path through the junction. So this train's coming along here. If it was a path junction, at the same time another train could go in this direction or this one because the paths won't cross. So having path junctions can be really beneficial. Notice that when we have our signals out, we can see the block signal. Well, this whole red section, this is one block and it's all part of the same junction. And the one rule that you have to remember when it comes to a pathing signal is you want to path into the junction. So it will be this one, and you want to block out. So this is a block signal, that's a path signal. We're pathing in, we're blocking out. Notice how the other two block signals here are coming up with an error. This is because they have conflicting entry signal types. So it makes it really easy to understand that this is an entrance, so we need to path in, and the same on this one. So all entrances to the junction need to be pathed in, all exits blocked out, and you can see that is now pathed. Everything is working correctly, which should mean when the steel train comes down here, it should be able to path straight through, and if we have this train coming here, it will stop if the steel train's pathing through, or if we have another train coming from another direction, say from here, they'll both be able to path through at the same time. 7 minutes to wait until we unlock the Hoverpack, and then we'll path the rest of the junctions. Okay, just while we wait, we're going to upgrade these to all Mark IV so that we clear any of the throughput issues. There may still be a problem. Not quite sure how much we are producing of everything. It may exceed 480, but I don't think so. Time will tell anyway. Now that that's all upgraded, it should be a lot easier for us to maintain these lines. And from here, we've got 1 minute 14 seconds left to get back to the Hoverpack. Wow, to the hub so we can unlock the Hoverpack. And for that, I should mention we're going to need one important thing, which is a load of these coupons. So in order to unlock the Hoverpack, you need to have aluminum alclad sheets. And we don't have that. We're not producing them just yet. But the Hoverpack makes life so much easier when it comes to building. So what you can do is, once you've unlocked a particular resource, you can find it here. So we're going to grab, I think 1 stack, it might be 2 stacks of aluminum alclad sheets. So we're just going to take them with us. And now, and we're back just in time to look at the Hoverpack. Of course, I need to go and get more motors, which is typical. But the important thing is, in a few more seconds, we'll be able to unlock all this. And there we are. Now that that is sent off.
Milestone reached. The Hoverpack draws energy from nearby power connections, and so can only be used in their vicinity. It provides an excellent vantage point of your work, which you clearly need. Otherwise, you would have optimized that obvious problem by now.
Thank you, Ada. As Ada mentions, once you've unlocked the Hoverpack, which is here, and you can see we can already build it, it allows us to get a different point of view when it comes to building. You've seen me use it before, if you've watched the previous episodes, because I teased it at one point. But it draws on power in order for us to use it. So we can hover pretty high, and we can now build from above, which makes building so much easier, which is why it's worth unlocking earlier. But you do need to make sure that you have enough capacity in your power lines to cover the power usage, which is 100 megawatts. Anyway, to the train junction. Okay, so we're at our first junction here. Now, what we can do is grab our pathing signal. Notice how we can see the blocks much easier now. We want to path into this junction. And that's for all the entrances. And then we want to have the blocks all out. And that should allow the train to continue through as it is currently doing. And watch, this one's coming in. It's not going to stop either. Actually, it slowed down a bit because they were crossing paths. Now, the next issue we have is that we have, after this junction, another junction immediately after. And if we want to path into this, there's going to be a problem. So we've got the paths going in, but we need blocks going out. And you can see, though there's a block here, we're having an issue with this one. Not these two are fine. And that's because the other entrances to this area need pathing. The other entrance being the one that is over there. Doing that, we should now have a path line. Fantastic. And the reason that this works is that pathing signals can be chained together. So you can have multiple pathing signals after one another, providing it ends with a block signal. So we've got the block signals there, and then we've got the block signals here. Although this one should be pathed as well. And there we go. This line should now, if we just grab that, should be all pathed without any issues, and you can see all the blocks clearly. Okay, with all of our signals pathed, it's time to move on to the next section. So we're going to need to get the raw quartz and the bauxite over to where our next facility is. And for that, we are going to be using a blueprint. We're going to just quickly set up a little area for this. And the blueprint that we're going to do is just very simple. We're not going to make it complicated at all, unlike what I usually do. And, ooh, thinking about this, we have the Mark II Blueprint Designer available as well. So why don't we unlock that really quickly? Okay, here we are. And we can just place all of these items in, unlock this. And the great thing about the Mark II Blueprint Designer is that it's the mummy variant. So it is one foundation in width and height and length longer, which actually adds quite a lot to the build space that we have available. But more importantly, it means that our conveyor lines can be 5 long. And this also means that you can build train junctions within a blueprint, providing you take care of the amount of space that you use for building it. Right, so let's get started with this conveyor line. We're gonna keep it simple. I want it supported. So we'll go with if we lift this up to there, I'm going to run this all the way across. And then we'll have a foundation, just a concrete foundation. We're going to zoom that up inside it. We'll have a little platform for our bus. Then I suppose we can add a touch of detail like so. One thing to bear in mind when it comes to building little sections like this, it can be really useful if you want to add design to your world, to spend a little bit of time working on these blueprints, because they will add a lot to the overall look and feel of the build. So we're going to keep it simple, but we are adding a little bit of color, and we'll try and keep it aligned to what we've currently got going on. And there we are. The last thing that we need to do is to add our conveyors. Now we have 2 ways of doing this, and I'll show you in a moment. For this particular build, I think we're only going to need at max 4 conveyor lines. Probably get away with 2. There we are. And we're just going to set this up as a conveyor bus 4x1. And I'm going to add a conveyor just so that we know what this is and we can save it. Now, the next thing that we want to do is just have a look at how these are going to work. Now, currently in game, we have 2 ways of setting up a line and connecting them. So once you've placed your first one down, we can either go to Blueprint Auto Connect in our mode. So to activate that, when you have the blueprint out, just press R and you'll have a selection, or you can hold down R and select. We want Blueprint Auto Connect, and you can see we have managed to, we just do it again. If we hover the side of the blueprint with this one, it will snap together. And here you can see all 4 of these lines have connected because there's this link icon. And then from here, we can click once and then click again to put it in place. And doing so, we'll have this neat little conveyor bus built. The other thing that we can do, if we do not lock it in place, is when we place this down next to it, we'll do a single click, and then we can move this across to wherever we want, and the blueprint, providing everything is linked as planned, will allow us to auto connect with a space apart. I'm not going to do that for this because I quite like the idea of seeing the lines running together, but those are the 2 ways in which you can set up these blueprints as conveyor lines. So with that knowledge, we're now going to grab some encased industrial beams and probably some concrete as well, maybe a bit of steel, and we are going to head over to the raw quartz cave, which is actually over here, the quartz that we need. We can either collect it from this side of the island in the top northwest, but we'll need Nobilis to break through to it, or we can just run the conveyors all the way along to this area where we can then send them to the next facility, which is what we're going to be doing, because the next facility will be over here, And I need to bring the bauxite from here all the way down to here as well. Also, just a quick note, I'm not sure I've mentioned this before, so I thought I would. If you print your coupon and you have coupons on you, you can put them back into the awesome sync just by dragging them over, and you can see they've now collected there so that you don't have to carry them on you. And here we are back into this cave. Remember, if you don't like spiders, then there are going to be a few here. You'll either want to have arachnophobia mode on or just put it into passive. So this is where we're producing the SAM, I think the SAM fluctuators, or no, reanimated SAM, right? But here we also have our, is it just 2? Oh yeah, there's a third one there. Our 3 raw quartz. So we're going to take the reanimated SAM out, and we're also going to take all the quartz. And we're going to do this really easy. We're not going to think too much about it because we're never going to come down here. So I'm just going to overclock these. I'm going to get the most out of them. We'll connect these up, and we're just going to drag the conveyors all the way to the exit point. Once we're at the exit point, then we'll start building all of the conveyors and conveyor buses. But there's really no point, you're not going to spend time here trying to build a facility all the way through, get a nice clean line. It's not worth it. And that's the same with this. I don't want to tear this down. So instead what I'm going to do is add a splitter, probably over here actually. We will set this up. Oh, we have a Mark II available actually. Yeah, I'm going to upgrade all these to Mark 2, and then we're going to send all of these resources all the way out. And here we are with the line finally done. I'm actually really happy with how this has turned out, given that I wasn't trying to keep everything clean and neat. So all I've done was hold control while placing these so they were in straight lines alongside one another, and we've managed to do quite a clean bus all the way out of the facility, ready for us to actually set up the conveyor bus line, which we're going to do now. The spot that we've chosen to do our aluminum facility in is actually this section here, because we have the bauxite all the way up that you can actually see it just there, and we have water that we're going to need. There's plenty of that in this little spot, and we're also going to need copper, which we have here. The other thing, of course, is the raw quartz, which means we're going to run a conveyor bus line from that spot over there. We're going to run it alongside this section, and then it's going to run straight across here, and then probably about here, bend down, follow the little stream all the way through to this section. Now we could add a train line. This is actually normally the kind of distance that I would consider doing a train line in order for logistics, but it's important that I show you how to set up bus lines as well. So we're going to do that for this one, and then moving on in the future we will probably expand on the train line over there so that it goes around the coast. That way everything is really easy to build because it's a flat space, and we'll also go south as well. Right, let's get building. Because all of this is already on a grid, we can piggyback off this. So I'm going to place this aligned to that section. I'll probably move the coal line so that it's not clipping just onto the inner section. And we'll place it here, and then I can just manually add a concrete pillar underneath. At this point, we need to connect this all together. We can do a clean connection if we want to. We can just bring that maybe out like this. And then if we grab our conveyor elevators, we want it roughly the same height. And then we're going to set this up into the straight position. And though it looks a bit wonky, I'm hoping if we stagger by holding control when we placed it, it's not working. Instead, I'll just run that across to there. I'm gonna place this one slightly in front, so we're staggering the inputs. With a little bit of luck, it won't look too odd. It's not perfect, I'll give you that. And finally the SAM ore. I'm going to take the SAM ore, even though we're not using it at the moment, because I'm sure there will be a time and a place where we want to play around with that in this series, so why not? At this point we have our initial bus setup, which means we can now use the blueprint mode with auto connect. And I am just going to go along and place these, double click, and we're going to run them all the way around here as well. Another great thing that we can do with this is if you want them to connect, you can nudge it up and in place so that you can connect with them, and then remove the snap and we can bring it around to this side. And notice how the curve here, it follows the curve belt design, so it keeps everything aligned, which looks quite clean. Yeah, we can adjust this conveyor bus section so that it follows that. You can see how we're quickly and easily setting this up. So I'm going to run the rest of the bus all the way to the location. I'll probably show you how we do a corner over there, but I'm going to try and stick to this line for now, and obviously fill in the bottom here. And this section is going to need redoing as well, so that it follows the same pattern, but we can just copy and paste each item individually because it copies the same element. So if you paint it black, it will be black. Another thing that I think we should also add that I haven't added to the blueprint, doesn't really matter, you don't need to add this to the blueprint, is some kind of power connection along here. We're going to use just the wall mounts, and the reason that we're going to just add these is so that we can continue having power while we're using the Hoverpack. So I'm just going to place it underneath, and then bring it to the outside here, and then from this point on just place it in the section there. Unfortunately, you cannot align or auto connect power cables, so this is all having to be done manually. The bus is coming along. I'm actually really happy with its design at the moment. So the next thing that we're going to do is just a very simple curve design for this. So we're going to, along here, grab a foundation, and we want to hold control and bring this to the corner tip. And from here, we're just going to rotate it once in the direction that we want to turn. From here, we can then press H to snap it into position, and we can nudge it forwards 4 and then to the right 4, and then we're going to drop it down using H down 2. And you can see how we have created a tiny little curve. I am going to then repeat this design here. And we'll do it from the opposite end. And then we're going to rinse and repeat until it's in a position that we are happy with for the curve. I am someone who loves adding curves to my builds. I find it's a really nice way to change it up. And it means that we always come off the grid ever so slightly, but then we get to build beautiful rail lines like this, or even gentle curves to our bus lines. But from here, if we want to connect this back together, what we need to do is find a spot for us to place this. We're just going to bring it down so that we can connect. Would help if we're in auto connect mode. And then we're going to unsnap it. And from here, we will press H, drop it down so that it's aligned with that. And we're going to run this across. And fingers crossed, it should follow the curve, as you can see here. This last section wasn't connected, but that's no issue. If we go to the curve mode, it should align to that, like so, quite nicely. And there you go, we have a nice gentle curve, and we can continue. Ooh, help if I added the power. And we can now continue this all the way along, which I shall do now. With the quartz now sorted, we're going to work on the copper, which is just down there. We're going to bring that alongside the quartz here. And then I will set up the bauxite, which we'll probably skip ahead because we're just doing the exact same thing as we've just done. Now for the copper, I do want that to align with the quartz that we've got here. I just think having a clear input-output is going to be great for the planning of this facility. So to get everything aligned, what I'm going to do is place down this line of foundations here, and I will align them by grabbing that foundation. We're going to place that, oh, I can't jump over, into here. And then we're going to place the miner on top. So if we grab the miner Mark II, we're going to look at the node. That way it will sit on top of the foundation. But from here, we're just going to place this down, bring out our belt, and we're also going to overclock this. I don't mind it going to 600, even if we can't get those resources just yet. We're going to run this primarily straight until we have a clear line of sight to that foundation there. So from here, I'm going to grab a painted beam. I'm going to click it on the middle edge, which is actually down here. And we're going to, in freeform mode, run it all the way across to this edge here. Next, I'm going to grab my foundation and I'm going to snap it to the edge of the beam here. These won't be the same height because they're not on the same grid. So I'm going to try and merge them cleanly together. But you see how we've nudged it 4 up and 4 across. That means that these two should meet up just on the edge, and this is going to cut in. We're then going to do this on the other side, which should mean that these two are connected. And then hopefully that's a meter. Yeah, that's pretty clean actually. Great. So we're going to run this all the way along into here. Going to build this back up to where we want it to go to. And we're going to try and run that with a little bit of luck up along the outer line here, which means we will have to adjust the build that we placed. But we're going to run this all the way along through here in a straight line, and then we're going to do it in curve mode. So there should be a gentle curve. It would be nice if we could just click it and it would go to its max point. We'll just click it there, connect it together, and it should look like a pretty clean merge. Fantastic. So that is running all the way across now. We have our copper and our quartz. We've even got the SAM. Next up, bauxite. One thing that makes everything a little bit easier is if you want, now that we've unlocked the Hoverpack, we can just take a power line and run it all the way up the mountainside, so we don't need to worry about building any kind of ramp. We can just make our way nice and easily up to the spot where we'll be harvesting the bauxite. Now, I'm not too bothered with where all these power poles are placed. We're going to remove them once we've got a nice clean bus taking all this bauxite back to base. And we'll bring that all the way across, and we will, I want to say, stick to the grid, but I'm going to not do that. I want this to run along the cliffside, so it's actually going to be easier if I grab our catwalks. What I'm going to do is just get a rough. That's pretty straight. Yeah. So we're going to run our line along this. And we're going to do the same trick that I've just showed you. So grab your beam, connect it to the middle section. In the freeform mode, we're going to do the same here. And then we're just going to nudge these into one another. And from there, you can just snap them together. That has given us a nice straight angle. And then from here, we will add our bus. Although, it might be better for me to do a single line bus for this. So we'll make an adjustment there. And once I've built it all the way back to base, actually, we won't even bother with this blueprint. I'll just run this all the way along. That's fine. Make sure that we're also running power lines along this. If you're getting Z fighting, there are a few things that we can do to remove that, but I prefer just changing that to asphalt as they blend quite well in to one another. Saves faffing about. Right, let's run this all the way back to the facility. All right, so we have our copper, our quartz, and this will be our bauxite once I've brought... Oh, I haven't connected that up. We'll do that in a moment. And the water. I think that's everything that we need to get started with the facility. I've also moved the SAM and also the 2 other quartz just in this direction. So if we're going to use it somewhere, maybe we'll do a facility up here for the oscillators and the quartz crystal, which I've been saying I'll do and haven't done yet. Next though, let's just grab that bauxite from up there. We're going to use the same trick that we've used before. So we're going to find the exact position. See if we can get it in one try. And once we found the right position parallel to the one above, we should be able to connect these. Might have to, there we go. Head up a bit further and then connect this to there. There we go, that's our bauxite coming down. So we have a total of 480 bauxite available to us. I think we're going to keep this quite small. Maybe we can expand it if we feel it's necessary, but we don't need a massive facility. One thing when it comes to Satisfactory, it's often enjoyable to have plans of grandeur, but you really don't need that many resources. So though having an incredibly big factory is awesome, having just a trickle of resources will get the job done. And that's what we're trying to do with this playthrough. So we will, now that we've got this, start planning out the facility. So the first thing that we want to do is just place down a refinery, make sure that we've got everything that we need. Luminous, we're gonna need coal. So we have the bauxite and water, and then bauxite and water will turn into the alumina solution with raw quartz as a byproduct, and then we will combine the alumina solution with coal to produce aluminum scrap with water as a byproduct. So we're actually going to need to bring coal from somewhere, and the nearest coal is actually just up here, just at the top of that cliff. So that's going to take me a few minutes more, unfortunately, but I will do that, and then once that's done, we can get started. Okay, well, the buses are much bigger than I anticipated, so we're bringing down all the coal, because who knows when we're going to need that as well. But now we're running all that over to there. We have 2 slots of coal. These 2, which aren't going to be used, so they'll go to this facility here, whatever that's going to be. But here we've got the 4 sets of resources that we're going to need for this. And we're going to set up something pretty simple. So we'll probably do, I don't know, about 100 aluminium alclad sheets, if that works out. And we also need to do some frames as well. Not frames, casing for a future build. So let's have a look at the recipe over on Satisfactory Tools. And here we are. So we're on the calculator section, and I've just done a 120 bauxite build here. Obviously, we could quadruple this if we want to, but I'm really not that fussed. I think We have the option to do this if we want to later on, but let's keep it small for now. We'll probably double this up though, so that we'll be producing a total of 100 casing and then 90 alclad frames per minute, alclad aluminum sheets. And that actually makes things quite clean as well in terms of numbers, with the exception of aluminum casing and the silica. So let's do this. At this point, we have 240 bauxite, which is joining 240 water to 2 refineries. That's producing the alumina solution. The alumina solution then combines with 120 coal to produce our aluminum scrap, which is then sent to an aluminum ingot foundry, or 4 of them, and combined with silica to produce the aluminum ingots. There'll be 240 of them, and then we have 30 copper ingots combining with the 90 aluminum ingots to produce those alclad aluminum sheets. And then the aluminum ingots turn into the aluminum casing. I don't know. It does seem a little bit small. Shall we? Let's do it. Let's just... I was going to say let's double it, but then we're producing a lot more casing than we need. You don't need as much casing as you do alclad sheets. Even 180 per minute is a fair amount for the size that we're doing. Yeah, let's just double it. Let's keep it nice and simple for this. So we're going to need 480 water, 480 bauxite. So we're maxing out our Mark IV. Oh, here we go. 720 scrap per minute. That's fine. That's fine. We'll just do 2 lines of 360 to 4 foundries each. Right. Let's get this prepped. So the first thing that I'm going to do for this facility is just work out a footprint for us to work from. It doesn't need to be massive for this, but I do want to make sure that we're not using these like iron nodes or clipping into them so that we can use them at a later date. Which means that the facility wall will probably come out to this point, and we are going to need to bring in water from the lake as well. As such, we want to make sure that we have easy access to that water. Okay, and here we are. So we have laid out what I hope will be enough space for this. We also have a little space for the water to run up. Now, because the water is to this side of the build, we should probably bring the bauxite over. It also makes sense given it's on the outer section. So what I'm going to do is just paint in a rough idea of where we want everything. So let's go with bauxite along here. We know that it's going to take, I think, about that much space. From there, we're also going to have the aluminum scrap refineries. There needs to be 2 of them. And then we need the water to be recycled back into the system. That actually works quite well. This is actually a very similar system to my Let's Play aluminum plant. Speaking of which, I will put a link to that. I wonder if it's the same size, actually, thinking about it. It's a slightly different setup, but it's a pretty cool looking build, so I do recommend checking that out and following that Let's Play series if you want to see more of my creative builds. Next on, we do need to have a spot for our quartz to be turned into silica, and I believe that's going to be 10 or 11 constructors worth. So we're going to want to do at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's do it across here. Gives us a bit of space to play about with. And then you want the silica and the aluminum scrap to go to 8 foundries. Let's change the color to something a little bit more popping. So we have 4 there, and then we'll do another 4 with a space in between for the logistics. And then finally, we'll need, I say finally, there's a couple of things we need. We need the copper to be turned into copper ingots. Could be done here. It's not a lot of space that it needs, so let's do that. And then they will run along the bottom to our assemblers to produce the aluminum alclad sheets with the aluminum that we're producing here. I think we might need a bit more space because that's going to be 3, I think. Yeah, okay, so we can do all of the aluminum alclad sheets in this section, but it does mean that we're going to need a bit more space elsewhere for the casing. Actually, the casing's not going to require that much. If we push this along slightly, we should be able to fit it in. Let's go with just the white here. These are the foundry setup. To be fair, a foundry isn't square on foundation. Yeah, so it'll fit nicely between the 5, but that doesn't help us out over here. Unless, what if we put the copper production here, I mean it's already running down, combines with the aluminium, head down here, and be turned into the aluminum ingots. Then we have the, let's just expand this. Okay, here we go. So this section here will be for the aluminum ingots. We only need 4, but we'll give them 5. And then in this section, we will have our assemblers. So the first thing that we want to get sorted, seeing as it's going to be the most difficult part of the build, is to set up our alumina solution. So we're going to mark this as the middle point. I'm going to place 4 of those, and then we're going to have our 2 scrap production refineries. I'm going to color code these as well, just so that we know. This is alumina solution. Then this can be a scrap. And while we're at it, we'll have our water. And we don't need a huge amount of water. In fact, I think it'll come from 2 single water extractors. Now, because we're going to have over 300 in this pipe, we're going to have both of these marked as Mark II pipes. You don't want to mix and match Mark II and Mark I pipes, and the reason for this is they have a habit of bugging out, unfortunately. Instead of bringing the pipe up here, we're just going to pump it up to the next floor to the side of this. The reason being, I don't want any kinks in the pipe, and that tends to happen if you're running it up a slope. But there is one issue. If we have it like this, sometimes there can be more sloshing because the water's trying to get up here, and then when it sloshes back, it goes back down. So I'm going to lift it up before bringing it all the way to the top. And what this will do is hopefully trap the water that enters into the system in this lower section so that it doesn't slosh back once it's made it up here. So from here, we're going to run all of our liquids on the lower floor, like so. Now, one thing to bear in mind with this is with our alumina solution, they need 180 water each. So that's a total of 720 water that we're going to need in this section. Unfortunately, we're only going to provide 480 water. And the reason for that is simple. As I mentioned previously, when it comes to alumina solution, we have a byproduct that we have to bear in mind, which is water for the next section of this build. We go over here and we click the aluminum scrap. You'll see we've got 120 and then another 120. So 240 water to consider recycling into this facility. And I'm going to lift this section up so that hopefully once again we won't have the issue with sloshing when it comes down to enter the next part. And this is going to run all the way back into this section. Now this one needs 180 and this one is going to need 60 of the water from these. And the hope is, big hope here, that we're going to be able to just connect it all together and then turn it on and it will be fine. If not, we have some solutions to this, but we're going to see how it goes first, because if there are any problems, we can talk about them, which is going to be really useful for you guys moving forwards with this. The next thing that we need to do is bring all of our bauxite across. Now, each one of these I think uses 120, so you could use a Mark II belt. And the reason why you might want to use a Mark II belt here is just by limiting the throughput to the refinery when we're running a manifold, it means that we'll have more running further along, speeding up the turning on process. From here, let's go with the conveyor splitters. We can just snap these onto here, nice and easy, and then bring all of them along to our bauxite, which is just over there. And I'm just going to run that line above the water. And so we have, along this section here, our bauxite. It'd actually help me if I put it slightly across by 1. Let's do that. And there we go. We have our bauxite running to these. These are going to be ready to add the water to. This needs coal. That's the next thing that we're going to do. So let's grab our coal here. We're going to do the same thing as we did with the bauxite, except this time we should be able to run it all the way to the bottom floor without any issues. And there we are. Next thing, we need to bring the alumina solution up and across to these. That shouldn't be too difficult. Okay, and we'll do a manifold rather than split that, just so that everything aligns nicely. Looking at this, we do have another byproduct that's going to be silica. So what we will do here with our alumina solution refineries is pipe everything along a manifold, and once it gets to the end, we're just going to bring it up. Okay, now there is a possibility for sloshing, but the hope is that we don't have that as an issue. If it does, we'll face it. In fact, what we can do right now is turn this section on and see how it does. So one thing, when you start to build bigger, it's always a good idea to try the segments of your facility as you're running them or as you're setting them up, just to make sure that there are no hiccups, because it's much harder to find the issue when you have 100 or 1,000 buildables to work through versus just a handful, as you can see here. Now, I know we're not dealing with hundreds of thousands of resources at the moment, but it's good to just get accustomed to that way of thinking. So we're going to set up the lines, make sure all of that is going to the sink. That way we can see what kind of production we're getting out of this. So let's turn it on and see what happens. Now, I expect us to need... Yeah, we're definitely going to need a pump here. So I'm just going to add a Mark II. It's always good to, once you've placed the pipe along the line, the pump along the line, to just re-pipe everything, because there have been in the past, I don't think it's the case now, but better safe than sorry, there have been some bugs when connecting things, pumps to pipes previously. So it's always good to replace and redo them, just to be on the safe side. Now that all that's connected, we're waiting for the alumina solution. This is starting to get that water through. The problem here is that we're going to be bringing in all the water along here. It won't be enough, at least initially. But you can see we're producing the silica, which means these are about to turn on. So here we're starting to produce the aluminum scrap. Totally forgot that we're producing quite a lot, so we're going to need 2 separate lines. We want to make sure that the water is leaving these. This is currently running at 98%. The water is leaving. 96%. Water is leaving. How are we doing over here? Because the problem is when all of these fill up, and at this point, this starts filling up as well. So what I'm going to do at this point is just let it run for a little bit, just to make sure that we're not getting any awkward buffering of water, which is causing the circuits to turn on and off. If we are having an issue, we can have a look at fixing it, but it looks like everything's going well. Okay, this has been running for a little while now, and we've had no issues with this filling up, so I'm pretty happy with the outcome. We can turn this off now and get on with the rest of the build. Let's just remove all the other stuff. Okay, now let's move on to the next section. Actually, before we do that, just going to do our usual trick, grab a wall. We're just going to daisy chain these. It just looks cleaner. So let's run that all the way across. Now we're going to give them their own wall mounts. We'll do the same on this side. Then we can remove these walls. Wonderful. Okay, so that's... I don't like that. Next, we want to start producing our quartz crystal. So we're going to need 11 constructors for this. But I'm pretty sure we can squeeze it in here and maybe... Yeah, let's stick them there. 3, 4, 5. Do the same on this side. We'll add the splitters here. And then from here, all we need to do is bring the copper, not the copper, the quartz across to here. And I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that it fits snugly just there. Ooh. It'd be better going across from there. So we're just trying to keep it as clean as possible without putting too much effort into it. There we go. And I think that's the same height. Nope, definitely isn't. We can make that work. If we bring this belt all the way across to here, nudge it across, we should be able to compress the elevator between that and there. There we go. Nice, clean, tidy. And then all I'm going to do is connect all of these up and we'll do an overclock for both lines. So we need 10.666. So if we did a 33% 333 overclock on the last constructor and then on both sides, and we can connect all of this together and we'll have two lines that are both producing the same amount of silica, so they can go to their own dedicated foundry line. We've got one here, one there. So let's set up the foundry lines really quickly. Now at this point I need to connect this line to these and this line to those, as well as bring the aluminum scrap across for both of them as well. The best way that we can do this, or the easiest way, will be to set the manifold up so that it is already above. That way we're not having to move everything up and down. Just immediately is on the same plane, ready to be used. That means that our scrap can come along there and there. Right, once all of this is set up, I'll get these up and running and we'll see it working and see if there's any issues. Okay, so we've set up everything. It's starting to run. Oh, except for the silica there. That needs to also be sunk. And we're just going to run this and see if it's running efficiently. If it runs efficiently, we can move on to the next step. But again, there's no point working through the whole build, turn it on, and then find there are issues, and then have to work back through the build. The more complicated the build is, the longer it's going to take to fix. So by doing this little trial and checking over everything, it's going to be much more time efficient, I promise you. I've been waiting and it's not quite running efficiently and I can't work out why. Well, I couldn't, and then it occurred to me. So we need the silica in the foundries in order for them to run. And of course, I've just set up the sinking line. So we need to send that silica across this way to the other facilities. So I'm going to place a splitter here, then run that all the way around in straight mode here, where one line will go over there, the other line. Okay, temporarily we're going to clip through all of this. I will actually redo this once we know it's running and have it better aligned. We don't like clipping. Right, we'll give it a few more minutes. Everything is green. That is what I like to see. Let's just quickly check these. Yeah, that's emptying. This one's emptying. These should all be full, which they are. Just balancing themselves out, which is fantastic to see. I will cover how to avoid, like if you're having water issues, what you can do to avoid them in the future. But for now, let's get on with the rest of this build. So we have, let's just turn off the water. We have our aluminum going in from 2 separate lines. We want 300 and 180. How are we going to split that? 480 in total, 240 on each line. So we just need to put 60 off from one of them, which is easy enough to do. All we need to, well, we could just grab one of these, thinking about it. Yeah, let's just grab that one. We'll flip this around. So that will be our 180 line, and then our 300 line can just meet up here. Now at this point, we'll want the 300 to become aluminum casing, and then the 180 to be combined with copper ingots, which, thinking about it, we could do, where's our copper? Our copper is here. Let's do the copper just here, either side. From there we can merge both of these together. So we've got our 60 copper ingots, and we will bring the aluminium ingots above this line, or even above the copper line. That works just as well. So next up, we need to do our aluminum casing. That's going to be run along 4 constructors. So they need to do a total of 3.333 across 4. What's that? 33 divided by 4, 83.25 clock speed for each of the constructors producing the aluminum casing. Next, let's run this line all the way across. And from there, we're going to want to merge it, and then we're going to store it, or maybe send it elsewhere. I'm not sure which. I think for now we can just store it at the end of this line. So maybe something like this. We'll do the same for our aluminum alclad sheets once they're running. The next thing here is to add our power. And then finally, we're going to do our assemblers. Now we need 6 of these. There is one thing that I've forgotten to do though, which is add awesome sinks to the storage lines so that they don't fill up. So we're going to have to do something about that. Yeah, I'll probably move these forwards, or maybe even over here, and that will give us enough room for awesome sinks. Next, let's run our copper. And we don't actually need a Mark IV belt. So let's go with a Mark III, just so that I can finish this build without having to wait for it to load up. And then we'll do the same here as well. So these will take our aluminum. There we go. And we just need to connect these to power as well. And then I'll sort that out. We should be done. And here we are. Everything is starting to turn on. We're receiving those aluminum alclad sheets and also the aluminum casing. And we've not got any buffered water backlogging and causing the system to shut down. So this is a completed build. Really happy with how this has turned. Actually, one moment. What is happening here? Oh dear. Oh no. I mean, oh, it looks really pretty. But we have a lot of silicon just backlogging. I'm going to have to check that out. By the looks of it, the system is still turning on. So it does tend to take a little bit of time to get to 100%. And then once it's at 100%, it will be running. Same with this one as well. So I think that's just the issue, and because these are running at full tilt all the time, it's much easier for these to fully back up. We could add smart splitters on the end and overflow any excess silica. That might be worth doing, because if this silica backs up here, which is the main concern, then these will eventually turn off if they can't get rid of their output. Yeah, let's make sure this is running at 100% or as close to, and then we'll just flush any. I mean, there's not any in there, so it is running. It's just these are filling up. Oh, these are starting to buffer. Okay, I'm going to flush all of these, and then we'll let these get to 100%. And if need be, we can add the smart splitters at the end. But we shouldn't need that. All right, these are running at pretty much 100% clock speed, and everything else is working without backing up. So I'm pretty happy with this. I will keep an eye on it every now and then throughout this series, and if we do have an issue, then we will resolve it. But before we finish today's video, one thing that I did want to quickly talk about is if you're finding that your water is backing up, what can you do? Well, rather than recycle the water back into the system, what I would recommend doing is that you run a separate line. You provide all of these with the full amount of water that they need, and then your alumina solution to aluminum scrap refineries send their byproduct of water to a refinery. Well, it would help if we had the recipes unlocked. Here we go, this one. So we have a wet concrete here. Now, limestone is one of the most easily available resources. I know if I ping this now, you're going to see a handful of nodes nearby. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 nodes, 5 nodes. There's plenty of limestone around the map. And so what you can do is harvest local limestone and then send that excess water to a wet concrete refinery, which takes 120 limestone and 100 water to turn it into concrete. And then you can just connect the end line to an awesome sink, and that will remove all of the water from here. So you just need to worry about the water that's going to these refineries. Prior to 1.0, they actually had water filling up, and if the line filled up, the extractors would continue to fill the line with water. That doesn't seem to happen with the aluminum setups anymore, hence why these are empty of water. And so we don't need to worry too much about that. It tends to be the sloshing or pipe bugs that are the issue, but not at the moment. So with that out the way, the next thing that we need to focus on will be to sort out those oscillators that we've been trying to do for a while, and maybe we'll do some radio control units at the same time, because we're going to need those for the next space elevator parts before expanding our train line, because we're going to need to produce some supercomputers. Before we finish off, I do want to just quickly go over this layout so that you can see how it's set up, and you can replicate this in your own save if you'd like. We have the 4 refineries on the right that are turning bauxite into alumina solution, being fed by 2 water extractors. They're producing 480 water, if I remember correctly. And then we have the alumina solution heading to the 2 refineries just across from that, producing the aluminum scrap, with the water byproduct being recycled back into the line. So it's looping back. To the left of that, we have 10 constructors. They're running at, well, 5 lines at 533% clock speed, producing silica from raw quartz. And that silica is going along to 2 lines of 4 foundries. Each of those is taking one of the lines from the aluminum scrap refineries to turn into aluminium ingots or aluminum ingots, and then 180 of those aluminum ingots are being sent to the bottom with the 60 copper ingots that we're smelting in the top left, and 300 ingots are being sent to the 4 constructors that I think are running, if I remember rightly, at 366.6% clock speed to produce the aluminum casing. And obviously at the bottom we have those 6 assemblers producing aluminum alclad sheets. And in total this build is producing 180 alclad aluminum sheets per minute and 200 aluminum casing. And that leaves us just one last thing to do, which is to upgrade our belts. So for that we are going to have to unlock the Mark 5 logistics. That is in tier 7, and for that we need 200 alclad aluminum sheets and the 400 encased industrial beams. That is actually going to be a problem. I don't want to run and go grab those encased industrial beams, which we're going to have to. So we'll be right back in 2 ticks. Okay, there we are, and we're back at this end of the facility, and you can see we are having a little bit of throttling from these resources. As soon as more resources come in, we'll have more of an issue. So we can now use that aluminum alclad sheet that we are producing to vastly increase the speed, and now we have no issues whatsoever. So really happy we've managed to do that today. That is quite a considerable improvement to the build, so we can now go along, should we wish, and upgrade everything. Not that we need to. But guys, thank you so much for watching. If you're wondering what to watch next, check out my recipes video on aluminum ingots, because we cover all the alt recipes and even some easier ones to get your grips around, in case you're interested. Or if not, check out my other Let's Play series. The link is in the description below. But until next time, special thanks as always goes to all of our incredible supporters on Patreon, most notably our Lunar Eclipse patrons, Firefless, The Calamity, Ben and Star, as well as our Blood Moon of the day, which today is Dr. Shotgun. Until next time, as always, ciao for now.